Hi there. Welcome to the Writer's Desk, the podcast for the Inheritance Gambit. I'm Serenity, and thank you so much for joining me for the next little while we talk about our thoughts and ideas for how and why we put our game together. G'day, this is Serenity, and welcome to the Writer's Desk. Today I have Rocinante, and I pronounced that correct today, joining me to talk a little bit about our game, the corpse, and some of his thoughts. So, hey, Rocinante, are you there?
No, I am not.
He's there. Okay. So I know when we did our first podcast, you spoke about why you love this game and what it is that makes it different for you. You want to just wax lyrical a little bit more about that for me and let folks know what it is about the game that appealed to you to allow us to tell you are on our staff.
Well, for starters, we got to work inside of a comic book universe sans magic, which is always a selling point for me. Also, I like the idea of a universe populated with differing versions of existing characters. So you get to rewrite your own origin story to the villains and heroes that you always liked. It's essentially an infinite what else worlds playground that you can just toy with. The semi-dystopian backdrop is a good place to put that because you don't have to worry about the constant push of the original X-Men's politics and all of the back and forth and who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, Magneto, Xavier. The whole world is it's too expansive. It's too big to limit it down to small things like that. And it allowed for a wider brush to paint every character you've ever wanted. We've got that Spider-Man Mysterio combo guy running around. It's just fun and original thinking. That's a great what-if story waiting to happen. Or I guess now has happened. So the openness, really, the whole concept of being able to write all of the what-if story arcs that you feel like appealed to me mostly.
Awesome. Now, you also said something about this is a book that you'd actually want to write.
Yeah. If I were the type to sit down and hammer out several hundred thousand words.
Well, you do.
Yeah.
I've seen your poses. You do.
No, I've always liked the concept of a world this expansive opens itself up for universe building on a smaller level. You get just the very hint of base building blocks of the past. So you have at least a foundation to build upon. But outside of that, like, sky's the limit. You could do anything. Your heroes are villains, your villains are heroes. You just get to turn the entire universe that you grew up loving on its head. There's nothing that does not appeal to me about reaching inside of the heart of all the stuff that I enjoyed as a child and just curb stomping it, basically, and rebuilding it into whatever I could fancy, whatever would strike my fancy. It all works.
Awesome. Okay, so going on from that, we've got the corpse. So, and I know people have likened this to a Shadowrun type environment, and what is it? Not a dystopian. I can't even think of the word now. It's gone.
Cyberpunk.
That's the one, a cyberpunk environment. And the corpse kind of feature a lot in our environment. Can you tell me about a couple of the corpse that we've got on the grid?
Well, first of all, with your accent, every time you say corpse, I think of a dead body, and it entertains me greatly. It tickles me. I was like, whose corpse are we talking about now? It's I can see where people would get the Shadowrun and Cyberpunk parallels. We are clearly not there yet. The corporations have power, way more power than they do now. I'm just saying something, but they're not like governance unto themselves completely. I liken this to Shadowrun if you could turn the Shadowrun clock back like 50 years, like before things got completely out of hand. And because of that, you have wonderful RP you can build by pitting essentially mini governments against each other under the supposed watchful eye of an actually elected republic. The amount of double dealing and second guessing of trying to think of the word I'm looking for here of intentions, like all of the things your characters could want to do, and how many ways that can be flipped and turned and twisted in on itself. There's a plot right now that we've been doing for a hot minute, and when you asked me to do this podcast, I was in the middle of typing up a big cutscene that was going to throw a giant monkey wrench into the origins of the plot, just for giggles. Yeah, so like the idea that things are never quite what they seem, and we get to just veil them in corporate power struggles, means that there's no limit to what we can do and how double dealing and dirty we can get. As far as the corporations themselves, there's like a dozen of them that we've kind of hammered out. I'm assuming you want me to talk about Shaw Industries.
Well, I know Shaw's a favourite for yours, so yeah, sure. Shaw's a good one.
It is my baby. Shaw Industries is my baby.
So why is it your baby? What makes it so good for you?
Sebastian Shaw in the original X-Men comic books is one of the great villains of the X-Men's world without ever actually overtly being... He's not like the Magnetos or the Apocalypses or the Sinisters. Shaw's intentions are not world conquest so that he can put a crown on his head and rule all the things. His intentions are not some utopian anything, not building some fake little land where everybody is happily coexisting. They're not a mutant-dominated society that slowly tries to drive humanity out of existence. He just wants to be the power behind the throne. And he's very good at not being noticed for a guy who's as rich and as powerful and as omnipresent as he is. He's the third angle to the triangle of mutant power struggles. There's Magneto, there's Xavier, and then there's Shaw. And Shaw is the only player who plays on their level. Not because his mutant power gives him that ability, because, I mean, he can't pull, asteroids from the sky. He can't read everybody's mind or anything. He's a physical powerhouse, but it's just because he wields that much influence.
So and what you're describing to me here is a bit like the Wizard of Oz. Don't pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yes, to a certain extent. To those in the know, Shaw's word is divine. It's sacrosanct, mostly because he'll murder everybody who disagrees with him. But he's brutal, but he's not needlessly cruel. He wields all of the tools of power almost flawlessly. Everybody owes him favors or money. Nobody is clean around him. He owns everyone, and he plays a chess game that's many, 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 many moves beyond anybody else. In our game, he is one of the very few mutants to have survived the Purge. He exists sort of in the shadows, running his little empire, and nobody even knows he's a mutant. He has existed this entire time as just a guy.
So how old would Shaw be in our environment now, given that the Purge was, 30 years ago? I'm looking that up.
He'd be pushing 100, probably 100 to 120.
And is that part of his power, that he's that old?
Well, he absorbs energy and uses it to boost himself physically. So he's been able to heal instantaneously from wounds. Essentially, his aging process has come to a halt. As long as he is fed, not unlike a vampire, his physical power is potentially limitless. He's been known to grow strong enough to threaten to bend adamantium and ridiculous crap like that. He's hit Colossus so hard, Colossus bled liquid metal. So he's done some crazy stuff out there. But that's not the part of him that I've always found fascinating. It's the fact that in the comics, whenever the United States government built Sentinels, Shaw invested in the company, and he therefore owned the Sentinels whenever they started attacking. Shaw Industries had its fingers in that pie, even though it was run by a mutant, even though it was a pro-mutant organization. he saw the power of the Sentinel and decided, yeah, I'm going to be able to manipulate this to my own ends. And he's done that with everything. In our game, he's much the same. He is not Stark Fuji. He doesn't have all the best technology. He's not, what was the Oscorp? There was an Oscorp one we had that I think we changed the name of it. Something swallowed up Oscorp. That's the one. Yeah, he's not Alchemex. He doesn't do all the bio engineering stuff. He's not part of the weapons program. He's not, he's none of these other companies. He has no specialties. Instead, Shaw Industries owns small stock portfolios in all of them. It owns the devices that all of them use. It is the fulcrum upon which all other corporation businesses are twisted and levered. Mm-hmm. So he chooses to essentially be the corporation's corporation. If you're a bio company and you need a new centrifuge that hasn't been invented yet, you could go to Stark Fuji, but they're probably going to want a piece of it, and they're probably going to brag about it. And being run by essentially Stark AIs, they're kind of douchey. Or you could go to Shaw, and Shaw will have it invented for you quietly. Nobody will ever know about it. And maybe you pay him in stock options. So it doesn't even have to come out of your corporate budget.
So really no one knows that he's involved either.
Right. Shaw Industries covers dozens of corporations and hundreds of subsidiaries. United Allied Construction, that the Bastion character bit, is ostensibly in charge of, is just a subsidiary of another corporation that's owned by SI. SI is the great puppeteer. It doesn't actually do anything overt.
Well, it doesn't produce anything particularly.
Correct.
Now, I just want to also clarify here that Shaw himself is an NPC and he doesn't appear on our grid at all, right? Well,
correct. He is strictly plot device staff run for now. He's a complete non-entity. If he was to be summoned for a plot, one can assume that massive changes would be sweeping. If he was to show up into an actual scene with a large number of people, it would not bode well for anyone at all. Even a wee teeny would be just be bad.
So now you've mentioned the Bastion character, and I do just want to come back to that just to give people an idea of how things work on our grid when you're talking about corps and mutants who might work with them or be involved with them. How does the Bastion character fit into Shaw Industries or into our game setting and the Shaw Industries?
Ooh,
I mean, is he a clone?
Well, yes, he believes he's the natural born son of Sebastian Shaw, but in reality, he is an exact copy. He is a pure clone of Shaw. He has a much lesser version of his power because he hasn't had the time to perfect it. He's not quite as manipulative or good at everything as his father is. Again, that's an age, time, and experience thing. Mm-hmm. Bastion fills a very interesting gray niche in the game. He's one part villain. He's one part heroic ally. He seems to react to things on whims. Just whatever doesn't leave him bored, he'll commit to violence, or he'll just trash talk Hydra agents for giggles while they try to kill him. He's a somewhat unbalanced and yet ultimately very calculating character who fits into this tiny place between corporate overlords and the everyday people that have to answer to them. He is sort of an entry point into the major corporations for various SHIELD agents that he's building connections with, for international, for other nations' agents. At some point, Bastion's going to have to sit down with Bashed, and they're going to have a conversation. It's probably going to go very poorly for everybody.
I'm looking forward to reading that one.
As the only corporate character per se so far. He sits in a very weird position of having to balance all the plates in the room at the same time and make sure none of them fall.
Okay, so I am going to just interrupt there for a moment. What I really want people to take from this is that the Bastian character is a clone, and it's been fit into our setting, into a corporate environment, simply by manipulating the story around him. What's his relationship with Shaw Industries? Because he doesn't sit on the board of Shaw Industries or anything, does he?
Well, Shaw Industries is run by Shaw, of course, who also heads the Hellfire Club, which is where things get a little dicey. Bastian has no actual influence inside of SA proper, the parent company, the big mamma jamma that rules everything else. He does sit on the boards of about a half a dozen of the subsidiaries. He has some clout. His name alone will give him some of that clout. The fact that he's been relatively successful as a businessman, and his ability to be charming and also off-putting simultaneously keeps people off balance. And he's leveraged all of this to give himself the air of somebody on the upswing, somebody clearly who's gunning for top status. He's really flying up the corporate ladder, so to speak.
Yep.
It didn't hurt any that he started, a little bit ahead of most people.
With a silver spoon in his mouth, so to speak.
Yeah.
So really what I want people to take from that piece there too is, if you want to have a connection with one of our corps, if you want to create a character that's got a connection with one of our corps, by all means, pitch something to us, create something, put the background together. If you're not sure, ask us as staff. We're happy to work with you to try and work something out there. As an example of that, Bastian isn't the only corporate character. We do have Raquel, who works for Worthington Industries as a corporate fixer, and we've just got a new character on who owns their own private police force. So there's a couple of ideas around what you can do if you want to get involved with your corps as well. What sort of, now all of our corps own genetic IP, right? So what is the genetic IP that Shaw Industry looks after?
Unlike the other companies, Shaw didn't grab every single genetic IP as it was unlocked from the ARCs. He had no interest in mass collection because it's the sort of thing that draws attention. Instead, since he had the advantage of having firsthand knowledge of all of these mutants, he had met them and dealt with them in one way or another in the past, he chose which genetic IP he wanted specifically, and then he pretty much put a lock on it. And so, at least as far as the North American alliances are concerned, without Shaw Industries' express permission and access to their vaults, you can't create mutants that are based off of the characters of Multiple Man, Mystique, Morph. Who else is on that list? Banshee is on that list.
I've just put it into our chat for you to have a look at, just so you can refresh yourself.
I have no idea how this silly thing works.
On Discord.
Oh, see, now you have to go all the way over there. Now I'm opening up a hole in the window. See what you've done? Just derail everything, why don't you?
You've seen the screenshots of my screen. You know how many tabs I have open.
This is true. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Sage, Emma Frost, Harry Leland, who was a gravity controller and a member of the original Inner Circle of the Hellfire Club. Wingard, also known as Mastermind, he's actually a cloned or at least a copied version of him of some kind, has been NPC'd a couple of times in behind closed door scenes as an interrogator.
Oh, that's right. Bastian has to scare the crap out of my character with that one. That's right. I remember now.
So basically, Shaw very carefully chose about a dozen mutants who would suit his needs perfectly for what he was planning to do with both the Hellfire Club and SI as a total. He chose himself a perfect one-man army. He got Multiple Man. He got Sage to run all of his plans for to run all of his computer stuff. She's essentially a living computer as a mind, so she organizes everything for him. Of course, Morph and Mystique are perfect infiltration, 100% flawless infiltration agents. They work great for him as an intelligence gathering. Emma Frost is probably maybe the third strongest telepath, maybe the fourth. Borderline, she's clearly in the top 5 to 10, at least in the comics, and clearly one of his allies from way back when. So he's chosen her. Harry Leland is also another one of those old allies. Not only that, but a guy that can control gravity is never a bad thing to have on hand.
This is true.
It's just there's just so many people here that he chose for very specific roles, and it's only because he has complete control of their DNA and complete control of his own massively insane wealth that he can choose them to build himself a close-knit group of people that suit his every desire and need.
Awesome. Excellent. Okay, so is there anything else you want to say on Shaw before I direct you on to the next one?
Well, the one thing with Shaw is that eventually we're going to have to deal with the Hellfire Club. Now, as it stands, the Hellfire Club essentially is literally a club, extremely elite, high-end, what would have been called in a different time a gentleman's club. A lot of plush leather chairs and leather musty books and cognac and brandy sipping while smoking cigars and playing pool and discussing large business deals that either make or ruin small nations. It's a place where all of the truly power players come and go. Not always wealthy. You can be a senator and be poor if you sit on the right boards, if you're in the right rooms, then you wield immense influence. You'd be a member of the Hellfire Club. Most of the members consider it to be just like a sort of place that you can cut loose and sort of make deals, and it's the alternative to making all your deals on the golf course. But there are a few, the inner circle, who know what it really is, and eventually we're going to have to deal with that.
And that's going to be so much fun when we get there.
We've been kind of skirting around the edges of it a little bit right now. But yeah, once we unleash that, that's going to be a hell of a thing.
Awesome. Okay. So what I think the next corp that I'd like you to talk a little bit about is Stark Fujikawa. Now, why is it Stark Fujikawa? And I'm going to ask this from the position of I'm a complete comic numpty. I look at these names and go, Stark, okay, who the hell is Fujikawa? How did they come to be?
Wow, it'd super help if I didn't mute myself.
Well, you're good at that.
Yeah, yes, I am. Thank you for that bit of...
Just like I'm good at mapping.
Well, everybody knows Stark, so let's be honest, that's not the one that needs any sort of real...
introduction.
Explanation. Yeah, we all know Iron Man. We've all seen the movies, and if you haven't, why are you playing on this game?
Yeah, if you haven't, go see them. They're good.
Yeah, if you haven't seen any of the Marvel movies, I don't know what you're doing with your life. Fujikawa was actually oddly seemed almost like a throwaway addition to the Iron Man lore back in the day. Basically, they were a company that was used to prop up the failing Stark Industries after Stark disappeared into another universe and blah, 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 comic book shenanigans. So the gist of it is that they've been tied together for a few years now in the comics, and it would have been weird for us just to completely cut them out. Plus, if you're going to kill off Stark, which thank God, you might as well go ahead and add other companies that are similar to his in nature that have ties to him and make it like it would be in a world where corporations are this large. You just swallow each other up. There's a lot of fusion. There's a lot of purchasing smaller things. It makes sense, frankly. Like the same way Oscorp was swallowed up by Alchemex. It simply works better. Fujikawa was the Japanese company that actually bought Stark and kept it afloat, before he came back and split it up and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, okay, that just sounds like a comic thing to me.
It really is. It got a little crazy in the comics, but suffice to say, it's a nice little nod to the deep dive comic book fans. The fact that they would be fused into a single organization works, and it's a little Easter egg for the people who are real hardcore Iron Man aficionados. And there are tech specialists, is what they are.
I was going to say, so what is it that Stark Fujikawa do on our grid?
They're botanists. They grow all the plants.
I hate you.
They're huge into legal marijuana.
I hate you.
Of course, there were all the armored Starks. They're mechas. Come on, it's a Japanese company in Stark. Everybody wears a big suit of metal that shoots laser beams. If you have,
I'm pretty much they're the ones that have the license on powered armor suits. Basically, if you're seeing a powered armor suit around the place, it probably has a Stark Fujikawa origin.
I mean, I'm sure there are tons of other people out there. I'm sure Hammer Industries is out there trying to make some standard crappy versions of it all the time. And there's knockoffs left and right. But yeah, the Stark Fuji definitely holds the patents on the best of the best. They're running around making the really high-end custom stuff. They mass produce things for S.H.I.E.L.D., which are one size fits all. These will survive. The Mandroid armors and things like that. They're big into the basic. Ironically, they're big into weapons production and military vehicles and all that other stuff. And then, of course, if you want your own world-conquering Uber suit, they're the place you'd go to throw a few $1 billion at, and they'll spit you out a new War Machine or something.
Yeah. So a couple of things I'm noting on my notes here for Stark. They also did the RT node augmentation. I actually have no idea what that is, except it's been spoken about recently amongst the staff. So maybe you want to just add a little bit to that. But the other thing is they do artificial intelligences. Rocinante mentioned that Tony doesn't exist in this environment. He hasn't been cloned. And what we've done with him is he's now an AI, and one of the AI implementations of a Tony is a cab driver. But he does other things as well. But we've got the AIs as well if you want to speak about those, Rocinante.
I would assume that your Tony AIs are going to drink all your liquor, steal your wife, and then in the end stab you in the back and take all your money. That seems about their speed, but at least they'll be charming about it. But they also, they do the Pepper AIs, they do the Jarvis AIs that run all your basic house stuff. It's very much a way to keep the characters that were very human and would be very dead of old age at this point alive for us to still toy with and have fun with, especially those that were uniquely linked to Stark himself. I'm sure it makes some sort of knockoff Hammer AI that just runs around doing stupid stuff and humiliating itself because he's sort of a douche.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a character that was unique or was attached to Iron Man in some way, and you have a character that you would like to interact with them, I'm sure we could work out an AI that you could have.
Come up with something. Yeah. So other AIs are our Peppers, our Fridays, and our Jarvises. They've all been made into AIs. I think a Pepper AI is just awesome, by the way. And I do know that one of our Tony AIs, I can't remember what we called him. Oh, Tobias, actually, a corporate fixer type AI, has this thing in his contract that he must have a redhead as his assistant. An AI wants an assistant. So we do those sorts of things as well.
No, we do not. Some of us just go ahead and do it the old-fashioned way and have our assistants cloned from Sage's DNA.
Well, okay, Mr. Shaw.
I'm just saying.
But sure, if you want to have something that works with a Stark Industries type corp, and you want to do an Iron Man type thing, come and have a chat to us. Pitch us an idea. I'm sure we can come up with something that or help you work out something. We're not going to come up with it for you guys. You come up with something that works for you and works within our setting.
Well, hold
what
on.
else?
Let's be honest. You say we're not going to come up with it, but Reliant's going to trip and fall down some stairs and come up with some crazy off-the-wall idea at some point.
Well, yeah, and then he'll laugh at, and I get to play with it. So, Yeah. So what else on Stark Fujikawa? Let me have a look at what we've got in our notes here.
I was going to say, I'm not sure what you're looking for. They're the tech guys.
They don't have – that's actually really important. They're the tech guys. They don't have any genetic IP. They don't own any genetic IP.
Yeah. All their money is in the technology. That being said, they're not out of the Cure the Genophage game. They're just attacking it from a nanite perspective as opposed to a genetic one.
Yeah, and what do you mean by that?
Well, even they're involved in trying to cure the phage. They're just doing the basic, what you would expect the tech company to do when it comes to a potent disease like this. They're just attacking it they're going to try to physically affect genetic code with nanomachines as opposed to biological
Yep.
solutions to the same problem. They're the place where you go for all your fun weapons, all your goofy. We don't do magic here. Stark is as close as it's going to come to us doing magic. It's where you can hand wave the laws of physics and create a device that does things that shouldn't be able to be done.
Yeah.
This is going to be our new magic. It's going to be Stark Fuji doing something stupid with the laws of reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, if you want to have a connection in and you want to look at something that's not AI related, there's always the nanomachine revitalization. There's always the armor generation or someone who owns armor or something along those lines. I think we're just about out of time looking at my timer here. What is it you want people to take away from what you've said today, Rocinante? One thing, one takeaway point.
One thing?
Yeah,
Jesus
just one thing.
Christ.
Just one thing.
The corporations are an infinite playground. They are an absolutely infinite playground for people to get involved in. And I understand that the first reaction is to find a character that you like, an OC or a twist of an OC plus an existing character type or whatever your thing is. There's a want to focus stuff on the character to the point that you ignore the actual reach and potential of what could be done with corporate run plots. Given the number of corporations and the number of corporations that aren't even like the big ones that we list in the actual, like in the website and stuff, there are subsidiaries and extra companies out there, and there's always companies to be created. Like you said there was the new character with the police force.
Private police force, yep.
Yeah, there's so much potential in working within the corporations that it gives you a leniency, a freedom that very few other types of characters can get. You could have a ton of freedom playing, for instance, a popular trope generally is the homeless sort of weird character. That's great. It's very freeing and all, but you're going to spend an awful lot of your time trying to figure out how you traveled from point A to point B or how you afforded, food.
Yeah.
Whereas the Bastion character can randomly own a Hummer because why the fuck wouldn't he? He felt like it on Tuesday.
Yeah, it was Tuesday.
You can do really ridiculous stuff. You can really kind of go a little nuts. And because of that, you open up a whole bunch of new doors to plots that might not be available for everybody else. So if I had one point, it would be give some thought, some actual thought into what you would like to do either with or even better yet to a corporation. They're mighty and they're powerful and they're wonderful, but you could still shoot one full of holes if you want to, or blow it up, or set it on fire, or shit, join it
for espionage, or
become a member of the board, become rich and powerful, manipulate others at your whim, rewrite the political scene, get SHIELD agents fired so that you can then hire them for pennies on the dollar, and then earn their loyalty.
Can't do that.
Just wreck people's lives with wild abandon and then make them your puppets. There's so many options to be had.
All right, look, thanks so much for joining me today, Rocinante. I do want to do more corps, and I'll get you to come along and have a chat about a couple more in another podcast. If there's anyone out there who wants to know more about a particular organisation that we've got on the grid, or if we're going to have an organisation on the grid, drop us a line through the website, join us on our Discord server. Just let us know. We'll see what answers we can come up with for your questions. But apart from that, thanks for joining me, Rocinante.
Absolutely.
And that's the writer's desk for this podcast. Talk to you later, guys. Thanks for joining us at the writer's desk, the podcast for the Inheritance Gambit. If you've got any questions or anything you'd like to know about the game and why we put it together, please drop us a note via the website www.inheritancegambit.com.